Doom romance narratives play an important role in society. Not only do they capture audiences, but they also reflect the values and contextual concerns of the time that make such romances destined to fail. Doomed romance narratives are shaped by the values and context of the time it was written. Through different time periods, different values and messages have been communicated through these narratives based on the opinions of the author and common culture and characteristics of that time. This gives us an insight to how various internal and external forces impact relationships and give us the ability to compare these themes and reflect on the values communicated through these stories throughout the history of doom romance narratives. The verse novel We Come Apart by Sarah Crossan and Brian Connigan tells the story of a doom romance from the perspective of the lovers. The verse style in which it is written effectively reflects the cultural values of the time through the characters' dialogue and form of speech. Nico and Jess's connection is greatly influenced by their surroundings. They met each other at a reparation scheme for young offenders. Jess's abusive stepfather is a major external force that greatly contributes to her and Nico's doomed romance. She's uncomfortable at home and hates being there, and the violence that she has experienced throughout the years has damaged her mentally, which reveals to Nico as their relationship becomes closer. She feels as if Nico is the only one who can know her real problems. Nico's father is also abusive and sells scrap metal to make enough money for them to go back to Romania and secure Nico a wife, who he doesn't want to marry. This is also a reason for his and Jess's relationship not working out. Jess wants to get away from her family and away from where she lives, and Nico wants to make something of himself and live his own life, not in Romania with an arranged wife. This is partly what motivates the two to escape together, as well as a possible murder case on Nico's hand and an abusive family that Jess needs to get away from. The way this book is written in verse style shows the personalities of each of the characters, revealing how external forces like their family affect them and give us the perspective from both characters, telling the story through emotion. The cultural norms of modern society is also reflected in the narrative through inserts of text messages, language used, and events that take place. When Nico and Jess are separated at the end of the narrative, the reader can feel their pain through the way it is expressed through both of their perspectives. As Nico is hiding in the bathroom, counting down the remaining time before his and Jess's escape train is supposed to leave, he says, "Time to set Jess free from me." Once Jess is on the departing train by herself, she says, "He did this on purpose. He let me leave. They want to have each other, but they can't." The violence which ultimately contributes to the doomed failure of Jess and Nico's romance parallels F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. Gatsby and Daisy began their romance when they were young and were separated for 5 years when Gatsby had to go and fight for the army. During this time, Daisy meets a wealthy man, Tom, whom she marries. The night before her wedding, she received a letter from Gatsby saying he still loved her and wanted her to wait for him to make something of himself so that they could get married. This left Daisy conflicted and not wanting to marry Tom, but she did anyway. Gatsby secretly came from a poor and abusive family, but never told anyone, not even Daisy, as he had worked so hard to achieve his dream of providing a life full of riches for him and her. This external force of his bad childhood makes Gatsby have an obsessive determination for his life plan with Daisy. This ends up being an internal force that dooms their romance, as he wants Daisy to conform to his perfectly envisioned plan, but she thinks he wants too much of her. Daisy is conflicted by everyone else's opinion that Gatsby is a materialistic man who made his money through illegal means, and her own experience with him as a true, kind, caring soul he is. Her husband Tom had been having an affair with Myrtle throughout their whole marriage, but acts violently towards Daisy about her affair with Gatsby, and he is hurt that she would be unfaithful to him. The 1930s time period is reflected through Tom's sense of ownership and right to Daisy. F. Scott Fitzgerald's language used in the narrative is also reflective of this time period, as well as the war being the cause for Gatsby and Daisy's initial separation. Myrtle, Tom's secret lover, ends up being accidentally run over and killed by Daisy, but Gatsby takes the blame, resulting in his death, murdered by Myrtle's enraged husband who had been egged on by Tom to hunt him down. Daisy moves away with Tom and her family, unaware of Gatsby's death, due to Tom's manipulation of not allowing her to be contacted. Just like We Come Apart, the lovers want each other but can't have each other, making their romance doomed. Robert Browning's poem My Last Duchess, written in 1842, greatly reflects the common characteristics and societal beliefs of the time through the theme of objectification of women and the Victorian language it is written in. The Duke and Duchess's romance is doomed mainly from internal forces. Although the Duchess is dead from the beginning of the poem, Robert Browning crafted the narrative in a way that uses subtle hints of dialogue to suggest the Duke's view of women and his wife, which lets the reader come to their own conclusion of the romance being doomed, rather than telling the story of the romance itself. The way in which the Duke talks about his wife as the last Duchess reveals his belief that women are objects to be owned, controlled, then discarded of, which reflects the common belief in Browning's own time, the Victorian era. This could also be interpreted as an external force that contributed to the doomed romance, as societal beliefs influenced the Duke's opinion. The Duke complains that his wife would smile at everyone and appreciate everyone as much as she appreciated him, which he took offence to, as he thought that he should be her priority, and believed she had an inner life of her own. The Duke got rid of the Duchess due to this reason, and she died, although it isn't clear to the reader if the Duke gave this order or not, but we can assume she was assassinated based on the dialogue Browning uses. The Duke prefers his wife as something to look at and show off, hanging her portrait in the living room of his estate for everyone to see. There is no last Duchess in the poem to give her perspective of the romance as she is dead, ultimately showing that the romance is doomed as it no longer exists. I trust that my observations of these three diverse narratives have illustrated that doomed romance narratives written throughout history are influenced by the historical and cultural values of their time and are products of internal and external forces.